Welcome to Strength in Leos.
How's it going, everybody? It's Evan back with the Strength in Leos podcast. Welcome back to the show, and thank you for tuning back into this episode of the podcast, which will be featuring Jorge Diaz from Golden Valley Reptiles. Super excited to have him back on. He's an awesome friend of mine who I've made in the hobby for a lot of years now, and he's just awesome in everything that he does in terms of his projects, and then also with the stuff that he talked about today. It's just a great episode that I hope you guys enjoy. So without further ado, let's get started. And before we go on, I want to say thank you to our sponsors. The Blessed Gecko over the last 5 years has acquired an incredible variety of geckos from some of the top genetics available. In the past, they have maintained all animals within their own collection as holdbacks, as they have taken time to observe genetic pairings, dispositions, sizes, coloration, patterning, and etc. Go check them out on Facebook and Instagram, and of course go check out what they have available for sale. Impeccable Gecko is a small to mid-sized, family-operated, hobbyist breeder operation. They specialize in leopard geckos with high-quality genetics. At Impeccable Gecko, integrity and animal welfare is above all else. Miles Schwartz works with some awesome morphs and lines that are not only high quality, but also fairly rare in the hobby. Go check out their social media and awesome YouTube channel. John Scarborough of Gecko Boer Reptiles has kept and bred more than 80 species of reptiles, and his focus has turned to specializing within the genus Eublepharus. He has worked hard to pioneer some of the most cutting-edge leopard geckos while maintaining genetic purity and honesty. Go check out their website for their most up-to-date availability, and don't forget to follow all of their social media. Suburban Geckos is operated by Chris Charlton. Chris's passion and enjoyment for herpetoculture, and more specifically leopard geckos, drove the desire to take his hobby to the next level. Suburban Geckos treats every animal with the utmost care and respect, and cut no corners when it comes to the health and integrity of their geckos. Suburban Geckos is a strong supporter of the Strength in Leos podcast, so follow them on social media and check out what they have available for sale. Grove Geckos is a family-owned and oriented medium-scale leopard gecko business. Lance Musgrove is a hobbyist breeder with the goal of producing healthy, visually stunning, and refined genetics for their geckos. They can be found online at grovegeckos.com or on social media like Facebook and Instagram. Give them a follow and reach out to Lance at any time. Spotty-tailed Geckos is a small hobbyist breeder that focuses on quality genetics and maintaining excellent husbandry. Andy got started in the hobby when his daughter wanted a pet leopard gecko. He immediately fell in love with the animals and the hobby. Andy started breeding his first leopard geckos in 2015. To this day, he keeps a very small collection sourced from top-tier breeders. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Strength in Leos podcast. Super excited for this guest to be back on the podcast. It's crazy to think it's only his second time on the podcast, but he's back again. Jorge from Golden Valley Reptiles, how's it going?
It's going well, Evan. Thank you for having me again. It's the last time it was fun. So hopefully this one, be another little hit.
For sure. Yeah, I know a lot of people like that last episode, and they're like, got to get him back on the podcast. So we're finally back. Took us a few tries to get us to finally be back on for this episode. But no, yeah, I'm glad to have you back on. And this season has this season ended for you, or are you finally done hatching?
Yeah, so my last babies hatched out about 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 2 weeks ago. So, there's nothing in the incubator right now. But it's like breeding season is around the corner, over here it starts around late January. My female starts to ovulate. So, it's only a couple months away till we start getting eggs again, and even then, time goes by pretty fast. So,
Right.
We got to start prepping for that too.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I feel like every year, like, your season is going longer and longer, and eventually you just won't have a break at all.
No, yeah. Last year, I think my last eggs hatched around this time, actually, towards the end of October. So, this one was a few weeks earlier. But, even then, it's just a couple at the end. But, I still have my incubators running right now, too. So, I'll probably give them a little break in December and just kick them back up on January. That way I'm all set for the season to start.
Right. So, comparing your season in 2019 and then your season in your season in 2020 and then your season in 2021, what are like the biggest differences between those two seasons, just in like your projects or like how things went, production?
Well, the biggest thing was going to be production that I was concerned about, because I did mention that I was looking to produce about 200 babies compared to 2020 where I did about, I hatched about 135-ish, kind of lost count already. This year, though, I produced about 250, 260 in that line, So it was a lot heftier load. There was some times where, like, oh man, I'm going to run out of space, But I mean, I'm here in California where it stays pretty warm throughout the summer. So, I mean, that wasn't the issue, but I mean, as far as production goes, it was kind of a little headache, and then all the shows lining up and just everything kind of piled up together and made it a little crazy from like August till early October. It was a pretty busy couple months,
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. It's like if you're not hatching, you're pulling eggs, and if you're not pulling eggs, you're getting ready for season and shipping things out and doing shows. So it's crazy. Always got something to do.
Yeah, because like I mean, no, yeah, even then, like where it got kind of crazy was when I took that trip to Oregon to do that show. I was pulling out eggs, and then at the same time prepping to do that trip, because I mean it wasn't going to be a trip where it was going to be the weekend. It was going to be like a 5-day trip where I was going to be taking off on a Thursday and being back in California, Fresno, in early Monday. So that was a good span,
Right.
And on top of that, making sure all my day gecko species were good. My cresties, all that other stuff that I have here, the tortoises, So I mean, it was, it was a handful, for sure. And now I know what I can do, what I can handle. So definitely that 200 mark is it's going to be off limits for at least this next coming up season.
Okay. So yeah, like you kind of mentioned it right now, but so next season, what you're looking to do a little less than 200?
Yeah, definitely. No, shoot. I mean, if I pinpoint it correctly, I'm somewhere in the 150, 175 max, I mean, I can't really say that's going to be my number, but definitely I want to do under 200 because it gets a little tough, it's a little headache, feeding, pulling eggs and all the other stuff you have going on, and not just that, your personal life too, so I mean,
right. After a long day at work, then you gotta spend a couple hours in the gecko room.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like this year, I was kind of a little bit calmer, last year that was the big issue, last year I was working my regular job, because this is not my full-time job. So I was working 6 to 7, like 12, 13-hour shifts. And compared to this year, that was a little bit easier just because I was doing about 9 to 10-hour shifts in the summer. When it got crazy in August, that's when I started just to have 8-hour shifts. So that really helped out a lot, But yeah, definitely, like having the personal life and all that, it takes a toll on top of the season, traveling, shows, keeping up with messages, shipping, all that stuff,
Right. Yeah. So it's crazy because like you have all these things you got to do. So obviously the geckos are, living animals and you got to, clean them and feed them even if you don't want to. So like what keeps you motivated to get, keep that stuff going and, keep the geckos going with all your other stuff you got going on?
I mean, just the passion of it, like, I mean, since I was a little kid, I always was interested in reptiles, even though I couldn't have them. My parents were kind of strict, coming from a Mexican household, pretty religious, so until I got a little older, that's when I was, I can buy my own. So I was starting to, build up my own little collection, and it kind of just, it kind of grew into a bigger passion to what it is now, like, oh, I can produce this. Oh, what if I have, all this other stuff? Because, it's kind of limitless and, leopard geckos kind of like ball pythons, so many varieties, so many morphs, and It just keeps going, So, I mean, it's not that we get a lot of new morphs. It's just, the combos you can do or what you can produce as far as pattern, color, intensity. And it's always, trying to improve year after year. So, I mean, that's just always been a goal. I mean, and like I said, it's just reptiles have always been like a passion of mine since I was a little kid. So that kind of always grew, and then it kind of stuck with leopard geckos for a while because that was pretty much the easiest thing. Well, not the easiest thing, but a little bit more, in the way of taking care of them, producing. They were always more easier than other stuff. But I mean, I started off with bearded dragons. I had chameleons before. Obviously, the tortoises that I have, even though they take forever to breed, So I mean, leopard geckos is more of like, okay, you can kind of, produce pretty quickly, or within a few years, you have a nice little collection if you play it off smart. I mean, now that I have expanded to these other species, it's kind of more like the motivation now, like, I have the Willem's eye, critically endangered species, and then I have some cresties that are going up and some day geckos, so I mean, it kind of like that variety. And then over there with my little brother, he's having some chameleons, so that kind of always puts a higher drive to, not just leopard geckos, and it doesn't get as boring,
Yeah. I know you got kind of a little, we were talking about this, but you kind of have a little zoo going on there with all the different species you've got this past year, and, kind of expanding the collection a little bit.
Yeah, and the Willem's eye, the electric blue day geckos has always been like a goal of mine, to keep over here. And since 2014, I always wanted to keep them, but, it kind of never played out, worked out, or, they were kind of harder to get. So now that I'm more like experienced, more knowledgeable, I can actually, okay, now I can give it a try, without having too much of a failure.
Right.
But I mean, things happen. Things gonna happen down the road anyways. But I mean, there's always gonna be a learning process on that direction. But I mean, now I feel more comfortable enough for like, okay, if I have these other species, I'm gonna, I mean, not necessarily thrive, but I mean, I will have more of a experience in a way, because I already have kept leopard geckos, which they're more of the beginner pets for a little while, and
right.
So that's kind of always like a little push, but yeah, man, I mean, it's always trying to keep motivated, excited here, especially with all the projects, like with everything that's going on,
Yeah, do you see yourself breeding other species of geckos down the line, like along with the Leos? Do you see yourself kind of expanding a little bit?
Well, the electric blues is going to be the big motivation for next year. The big what should we call it? The goal, to have some babies from that. I right now have a 1.2, so I mean, I'm hoping to get at least one more female and one more male unrelated, for I can have a little variety on that, and then have the neon one, which I am gonna need a male for that. So I mean, I'm not too rushed for that, but I mean, little by little, I'm gonna kind of build up my little day gecko stuff, and have like nice little displays and all that. But I mean, for right now, it's just to kind of start and kind of see where I'm at, as far as their care and everything, because they are a little more needy than the leopard geckos, misting them
a lot faster
and making sure. Oh yeah, man, they're super quick. Like they came out accidentally one time, and it's a headache. That's a whole different topic too. And they're small, so you have to kind of
chasing
be, like,
geckos
really
across
careful.
the room. That's wild.
No, yeah, and definitely not handleable like leopard geckos for sure.
Right.
But so it just kind of a little motivation there on that little side project that I'll be doing next year. But I mean, as far as the Leos, there's a lot still to do, at least in my lines that I want to project to, since I am working on a few stuff. So, I mean, it's always a drive to, always creating some cool stuff, lately, I've been having some nice wine yellow high contrast stuff that has been popping up. So, I mean, that's been a really eye catcher on my end for me and for everybody else that follows me, and when they see me post, so that's always going to be another goal for next year.
Right. So you started breeding in 2014?
So 2014 was pretty much the year that I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this the correct way, the morphs track, skill lineages, because I did breed in 2012, just a little normal pair, and then in 2013 I had like a little blazing blizzards, a tramper, a raptor, Had a few more, but not they weren't from I guess good lines, so they were still more locally, even though they knew what they were and all that, but they weren't like good genetics, in a way. So that was kind of like my test run in 2013, and that's when I kind of started building up in 2013. Towards the end of that year, that's where I started being in contact with Marsha McGinnis of Golden Gate Geckos, John from Gecko Boa. So that's kind of like what kind of took off from there, acquiring good genetics, good lineages, what made the base what I have today, basically. Because if it wasn't for them two and having their geckos as my base, I kind of wouldn't be where I'm at right now, especially Golden Gate Geckos. I acquired a lot from her when she was still breeding full time, so that was always a big plus. And then she was Marsha, she was always more of a person that will prefer you to call. So like calling her will asking about more genetics, breeding pairs and stuff like that was always cool to interact, because not everybody does that nowadays either, calling and all that. So that was always cool, on her part.
Marsha loves to talk about geckos, so.
Oh yeah. She'll go on forever. A 30-minute phone call will turn out to be an hour and a half, So I mean, you know how that goes. But I mean, that was a good stepping point for me, at least, in those early stages. And in 2014, I had like a decent sized season, but then I wasn't too sure how, like, if I was gonna continue on a kind of like. At that time, I didn't consider myself like a high-end breeder or anything like that, but I did have some, nice stuff. But then in 2015, I kind of cut down a little bit because I wasn't too sure where I wanted to be at or how long I was going to be breeding for. But that kind of opened me up to like missing it and all that, because I think I went from producing like 30 geckos in 2013, and then in 2015 I produced about 75 geckos, and then in 2014, I produced about 75 geckos. And then in 2015, I went back down to producing about 30, 40 geckos. And I was like, no, I want to, I miss it. I want to produce, I want to make, nice stuff. And so I kind of restructured myself again as far as the lines. And even though I still had the base stuff from that I had acquired in 2013, I kind of restructured myself, everything. And that's when it kind of everything took off. And 2017 was kind of like, the breaking point where I started releasing the first high contrast, and all the projects were kind of taking off at that time.
Right. So, dude, you're almost at 10 years from your first initial breeding.
I
Not from like when you consider started, but like.
Yeah. So I've been breeding for a good while now. So that's kind of been what I've been doing, the last couple of years, kind of building up what it is today, definitely wasn't a thing that was done in a few, like 2 years, it did take overnight, because obviously, when you go into the more higher end stuff, for me, at least, it's kind of hefty to spend a lot of money, even though you're already spending a lot in equipment, and all that gets already expensive, and on top of that, electricity and housing them, feeding them, everything. So, for me, it was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna slowly go my way up there, and not being as rushed as, because at the end of the day, it's for me, as a hobby. It's not gonna be something that's gonna be making me money, anything like that. So I kind of like was kind of picky what I was getting, or what I wanted to work with, especially, and it kind of just, build up from there, and just kind of slowly move up,
Yeah. So when you were first, like buying stuff from, you said John and Marsha, what were some of the first things that you ever like bought into in some of your projects that you invested in?
So yeah, that's the thing. My key foundation has been the Golden Gate Gecko line Sunglow, Tremper Sunglow. Marsha has done a phenomenal job with that line. I mean, she had, when I acquired it, I think it already had like almost 20 years behind that lineage. And that was like a good foundation for anything tangerine tremper that will kind of commence from there, take off from there. And then on the side of John, I acquired a lot of nice stuff, like kind of like some Afghan tangerine trempers. My base of my bow stuff came from John Gecko Boy, and the base from my tremper stuff came out of Marcia. So, I mean, that was kind of like a good, starting point at those early stages for me. And then we're like crazy, other than like Marcia's Golden Gate Gecko line, which is known all over the world. I mean, the geckos I was acquiring back in the early stages, it wasn't a crazy morph. It was just more basic, but a good foundation, like I remember acquiring a really nice Maxno radar from John, which he bred for me for about 3 years, So, I mean, that was kind of like a good starting point of my bow stuff, because with that and Marcia's side of her Mac fasciolatus, I kind of made my Maxno bow fascials. So that's where they originated from back in 2014 when I started breeding those. But, I mean, that's what I kind of tell sometimes people, or when they reach out to me, like what they want to work with, and I kind of pinpoint them to having a good foundation, because that will kind of set you off on the right path from the beginning, instead of, not planning your projects out correctly or acquiring geckos that you don't end up using or not liking,
Right.
And for me, that's been fundamental, at least for, not saying success, but I mean like my continuation of producing nice animals, geckos, having that great foundation, and being in that right path by contacting the right people when I was barely starting.
Yeah, and I'm glad you kind of mentioned that, because I know a lot of people, they just kind of go in so many different directions. You don't really know what you're doing, but like just what you're doing, like that kind of shows where you started off to. And where you're going. It's like crazy that those same geckos you started off with, that same lineage, is still in your collection and creating awesome stuff all the way today.
The only unfortunate part is that the Golden Gate Sunglow male, the original male that I got from Marcia, he lost his one hemipene back in 2018, and he lost his second hemipene earlier this year. So that's the only bummer thing. But I mean, it happens. He's gonna be 10 years old already. He's up there in age, But I mean, I still have a son, and I have a daughter and a granddaughter. So I mean, my production rate of Golden Gate Gecko Sunglow was really low this year, and next year it looks like it's gonna be even lower. So I mean, we'll see how that goes, So I mean, even then, like there's still people around, that I work with them. So if anything, I could probably acquire one more female. That way I can keep that going also.
Right. And at a time, you were kind of one of the only people like really promoting that you were working with him, because even when Marcia kind of stepped out for a little bit and wasn't around and had Golden Gate Gecko Sunglows, you were kind of the man to go for those things.
Oh, yeah. And it's still today. I mean, I still get reached out for that. But, I mean, like I said, the production rate hasn't been in my favor, just because I only started off with the 1.1, and then kind of just like kept it at a 2.2 the whole time I've been breeding them, so they're getting old, they're not producing the same anymore. So that was another kind of my mistake as well, not planning that out. But I mean, at the same time, I knew there's other people that were going to have the lineages, so I mean, that kind of gives the opportunity to other people to produce them too, and not really inflating everything. But yeah, I mean, those have always been a prestige to have here with me, because the background of Golden Gate Geckos, I mean, I always admire Marcia for all her work and what she's done to the community, especially, she's always been a pioneer, from my standpoint,
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, but I mean,
so for all the different morphs that you have, and just specifically with the Golden Gate Gecko Sunglows, we noticed that's in a little part of your HC line, and you kind of injected that into your HC line. So what role does kind of the Golden Gate Gecko Sun Glow play into your HC line, and like how much % is it? And I know a lot of people ask you those questions.
So going a little back before that, I always liked the Tangelo look. So the Tangerine Tremper, Tangelo look from Ron Tremper, but they were kind of pricey. So, me still being kind of new to getting acquiring morphs and lineages, I was like, I'm not sure if I wanted to invest in that, or like in a Tangelo project. So, I did have the Golden Gate Gecko line, and in 2015, I actually produced a male that he wasn't a sun glow, meaning he didn't hypo out. He kept basically all the pattern. So I was like, okay, well, obviously, if you do super hypo to super hypo, it doesn't mean 100% super hypo. You're still going to get here and there some geckos that will keep or retain that pattern. So he was one of them. So that was kind of my foundation to my Tangerine Tremper. From then, I actually had a sibling from that same male that kept the same pattern as well. And then I had acquired some Tangerine Trempers from Gecko Boa, and kind of from there, it kind of took off. The Tangerine Tremper, and then to what I call now the high contrast. So speaking now, my high contrast is kind of more diluted. Some stuff has more Golden Gate Gecko stuff lineage than others, but I'll say like at a ballpark around 25% of most of my high contrast stuff does carry the Golden Gate Gecko line. Some a little bit less than others, but around the ballpark right there. But yeah, it was a great foundation, especially for keeping color, because that's kind of more of what I try to aim for, like a gecko that will keep its color throughout the years, not just having nice intense coloring, orange coloring for the first 2 years, but even then further on, because even like my Golden Gate Gecko stuff that I've been having here for 9 years, or the son, he's the one that started the high contrast project. He still has decent color, but he's hitting 8 years old now, or 7 years old, so he's getting up there in age too, So from there on, it kind of took off, but that was kind of my foundation, the Golden Gate Gecko line, and then just kind of acquiring the correct geckos to throw in there, and from there on, kind of line breeding and adding a little bit here and there, to the lines. Then that was kind of like the breakoff point in 2017 for my high contrast. And then in 2018, I actually started popping out some jungle stuff. And that kind of what turned everything around as far as look, because the first couple generations of the high contrast was banded, like a typical Tremper, banded Tremper, albino, Tangerine Tremper. And from 2018, that's when I started producing the jungles and the stripes, so that kind of more of the direction where I wanted to go to. So now whenever you see me say Tangerine Tremper, it's because it has a regular banded look. When I call my stuff high contrast, it's more of the jungle, the stripe look, the little more eye-catching, pattern in a way. But yeah, it kind of directed a little bit different in 2018, 2019, and right now it's kind of still in the same directions where I wanted to be at, but now I'm adding the wine yellow, and on top of that, the bold Tremper stuff that I acquired from John Kagoboa back in 2017. So I integrated that also. So that's kind of what I've been working with too, So
yeah, you've added a lot of crazy like stuff into that, and even just in expanding kind of what that means. Like the look that when I started getting stuff from you, like what was that 2016, 2017, like how it looks now is totally different, and it just shows like how much work you kind of put into that. And although like obviously the work and the time that you put into that line, but also knowing like kind of what bloodlines to add into there to kind of get that look that you wanted. How did you like go about doing that? Because there's so many like people that have high contrast Tangerine Trempers now, and from different kind of lineages, and even like Steven, he was in the hobby a while ago. He had his own HC look. So what kind of makes your
Yeah.
high contrast line a little bit different from everybody else's that's out there?
I mean, it's hard, because I mean, at the end of the day, you want to be a little bit different than everybody else. You want to have your own look. For me, I think at least my look, where I wanted to go to, is more of the jungle look and the stripe look. I mean, not everything's gonna be kind of crazy perfect, but it's gonna have that, that intention of having a nice jungle pattern or having a nice stripe pattern. And yeah, and then early on, I was very picky what I was getting. I acquired, like I was saying, some tangerine trumpers, and a lot of stuff too that I will try to acquire will be background of Golden Gate Gecko line. So I did a little trade with you were mentioning Steven FC Reptiles. I did a little trade with him where he had I had done the year before. I had done a little trade with him for his high contrast, which was a tangerine tremper from the Golden Gate Gecko line lineage, and he integrated that to his high contrast stuff. And then from there, I acquired an offspring from that his project, kind of from my project in the early stages, and that kind of helped out, bringing in new lineage also, and then I acquired Afghan tangerine tremper that has a little bit of Golden Gate Gecko line from Gecko Ball also, and on top of that, another tangerine tremper. So I mean, like when I was acquiring geckos for my project, it wasn't even like a jungle or a stripe. It was still a banded gecko. Just the striping and all that just came kind of luck and just kind of line breeding. From there on, because it's kind of easy to, I mean, not easy, but like a little easier than other reptiles to line breed, like a leopard gecko, you won't run into crazy issues right away, as long as you kind of always refreshing the lines a little bit, you're always adding, and then on that note, I also had acquired, back in the early stages, an apter from Golden Gate Gecko line. So I had an apter from that, and from there on, I kind of bred apter Golden Gate Gecko line. And whenever I needed to add something new to the high contrast developing, that will be another thing ingredient that I will be adding. So I mean, even though I don't really pop out a lot of raptors, but I still have some head eclipses here and there in the lines. But that was another thing that I added also. And then in late 2019, I acquired a red diamond line from Gecko Boa, which until this year I bred it to one of the females. The offspring from that, I bred it to one of my high contrast females. So, I mean, even then I don't want to influence too much red diamond line into my high contrast, but it was just something that, just to mess around with. I know that red diamond line blew up last year and it got really, popular and everybody wanted to get it. But I mean, I just kind of got it more of, I have another nice tangerine tremper high contrast that I can, work with, and in case I need, something to integrate it to the high contrast projects, even though I won't be adding it to everything. It would just be for a pair or two just to see where that goes through. But I mean, that's another thing too, another little side project that I have within the high contrast project, adding that red diamond line. And then even then, like the high contrast project has like 3 different other lines in them, like I have the wine yellow stuff that I've been popping up, the wine yellow bold high contrast, and then I still have the original, like the banded tangerine tremper look. And then I have a male that I produced in-house that I coined El Capitan. So that's another look that I want to go towards too, So within the project, I have like another 3 or 4 side projects inside the project, So yeah. So I mean, it expands pretty heavily. I mean, it takes up a good quarter of my room, the gecko room, just the high contrast stuff. But I mean, it's kind of crazy, like it just kind of it blew up to something where I didn't even think it was gonna be at. If you were to ask me back in 2015, 14, like, oh, tangerine trumpers, like, oh, I wasn't thinking of doing like a high contrast project until, I was like, okay, well, maybe I should do it, because I saw it and I was liking what I was producing. So I mean, it kind of just blew up from there, and it is what it is today. Something that's kind of been catching a lot of attention, and I'm really happy where it's been going to.
Yeah, and you're the kind of guy that kind of lets the geckos speak for themselves. In, I don't know, 2014, 2015, like, Max Snows were popular, tangerines were popular, but you kind of went on the tangerine shrimper route that no one was even thinking about, and you just kept with it. And that kind of just shows you, like, if you just keep going and work with what you like and, just show off your progress, that's what gets people to, get into your projects and get questioning and asking about what you're working with.
And even then, it's like I tell the people all the time, like they ask, like, oh, how can I produce, the geckos like you, or what can I do to improve, or and it's always going to be something that it can't be done overnight. It takes time. Especially people that have been breeding for a long time. Another person who's been really having some really nice stuff is Chris, Suburban Geckos. So right. I mean, his stuff is really nice too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, his tangerine trumpers, the wine yellow stuff that he has, the trumper stuff, they're super nice, So I mean, it's something that you kind of, build up, and you don't see where it's heading until you kind of start going back, And that's the great thing about like posting on Instagram and having a Facebook, because now I go back sometimes to my posts that I will post back in 2014, 15. And then just the development of the lines, like how it was, how it's been through the last couple of years, it's been a big change, but sometimes you kind of see it, but don't see it. But then until you kind of like start to look at it, you'll be like, oh man, then you remind me that I've almost been breeding for 10 years. You know what I mean? And I was like, man, it's been that long, but I mean, it's been it's been fun, this whole time, and every year, it has its ups and downs, but I mean, it's always, a motivation to just to see what's going to pop up or where you're going to produce and all that,
Yeah. Yeah, man, it's crazy. Next thing you know, you're going to be retiring and move to Costa Rica like Ron Trimper.
Nah,
I miss
I still have a long way to go.
No, but yeah, that's a good point. Just like looking back to your old like social media posts, and even go to like any breeder, go to like John or Chris's page, and like your page.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Go back to like the first post. It's nothing like it is today.
Oh yeah, definitely. Even then, like back when I would talk to John, and it'll be easier because I mean he wasn't as big as he is now. So I mean, emailing him or messaging him on Facebook, it'll be a lot faster than what it is now,
Right.
But I mean, we're all growing, so I mean that's the good thing, like I mean, as long as you have the passion for it and just have that motivation to just create nice stuff and beautiful geckos, that's always a plus, So I mean, you got that drive, go for it, keep doing it.
Right. Yeah, and you've seen that success in kind of your kind of projects and what you have now with your business, and kind of growing GVR to what it is today, and even incorporating some newer stuff that you have in. Like you kind of, it's crazy, like with the projects you have a few projects that you're really known for, but you kind of have a really nice wide range of stuff. You don't just have like the tangerines, but you have nice, bell stuff, nice trimper stuff, obviously, white and yellows. I don't know, like what don't you have at this point? It's crazy.
Well, and actually, I don't have a big variety. I mean, another thing that I really have that I like, well, the tangerine trumper is not my longest project. My longest project has been the Murphy patternless bells radars. That one I've been trying to produce. I mean, I never held back a lot of animals a lot of geckos from that specific stuff because it was always like a little side thing. Okay, if I pop it up, I'll pop it up. But if not, it's it's okay. But I've been trying to produce Murphy pattern bells for the last 5-6 years. No, since 2015. Really? And I still haven't really hit on anything. I keep hitting on just Murphys or bells, but never same. So everything that I have is 66% possible hit. So I mean, I've been really against the odds, but like I said, I don't hold back a lot either. So I mean, that's another thing that I don't have. That project is only about 8 geckos. 8 geckos. Yeah, 8 geckos max. So I mean, even then, I haven't held back like the tangerine tremper high contrast stuff. But I mean, that's probably my longest project. The Murphy patternless radar stuff. Right now it's kind of like a little. Yeah, right now it's a little different because I do have a male. He's a wine yellow. He's 100% head for both.
Nice. Okay.
And then I have a unrelated female Max Snow, 100% head. Murphy's patternless bow, but I mean I just haven't hit the odds. I've been producing some nice wine yellow Murphy patternless stuff, but I mean it's not both. And even then this year, next year I'm hoping to prove them out bow. If they're not bow, then I'm gonna have to restart the whole thing again, And even then, my Murphy's patternless come from the Golden Gate Gecko line, so that's what I was talking about, like having that foundation, So that's kind of where I, when I acquired that Murphy patternless lineage from the Golden Gate Gecko line, So, and it goes back to like the foundation, and then also my original blood stuff. It came from Golden Gate Gecko stuff, Golden Gate Gecko line. So I mean, having a good foundation is always a good, a good plus. That way it'll get you on the right foot path towards having your projects established. Even though it might not seem in the beginning like it's gonna be taking off really quick, but just as you get on with the years, especially like myself, I've been breeding for a long time. That foundation has really helped me out.
Right. And does your bold stuff have any Golden Gate geckos in it at all?
Bold, as far as I have. So I have bold stuff. I have the bold tremper stuff that I put into the high contrast stuff, which that one came from Gecko Boa. But then I have pure lineage Golden Gate Gecko bold bow stuff, and then I have some bold stuff that is half Golden Gate Geckos. That one I acquired from my friend Bolden Stripe, which he has majority of Marsh's old the line, I think it was like the R2 line or something like that. From like way back then, he has all the bold bow stuff and all the bold lineage Golden Gate from her original stuff on his side, But I acquired a little bit from him, which now I have some bold bow and some regular bold on my side, But I don't produce a lot of that either. It's only a small handful of geckos also. But yeah, I mean, even then, I just, it's still good to have those prestige lineages, in your backgrounds, in your lines, and all that.
Right. So how do you know how much how many pairings of each kind of project you have do you do? So I know, like, you said like your Murphy's patternless bell, like radar stuff, like that stuff doesn't go as much into your projects, and you don't have that many numbers going each year. But like with your HC stuff, that's like 25% of your collection. So how do you kind of decide in like all this stuff that you have, like, okay, I'm gonna try to produce this many this year, and try to like do this many this year? Like, how do you kind of go about like doing that when you're setting up your pairings for the season?
So I'm in the stage where if I can give some of my females a year off, or my holdbacks from like 2020, I'm not gonna be super pressuring them to breed the next year, because I have like the parents still, or other females that are already older, So as far as doing pairings, I'm more okay. If they need another year, I'll give them another year. Because even then, this year I didn't breed a lot of my holdbacks from last year. I think I had like 30 holdbacks from last year, and I only bred like about 10 of them.
Oh wow.
You know, so I didn't breed a whole lot of my holdbacks from 2020. So as far as pairings, it's kind of like ballparking it. I mean, I'm not that good either right now because I went way over 200, you know. But it's kind of like my first priority is having that high contrast, you know, my original pairings. But even then, like my some of my original females this coming up year, they're gonna be having some breaks because they're already going on 4 years. But so that's kind of like the first priority, like high contrast pairings, and kind of like getting that down. After that, my little bit of the bow stuff that I have going on and all the other little side projects, it kind of goes towards the bottom, you know. But yeah, it's kind of difficult. I mean, for me still, you know, to see how many pairings I'm doing and, you know, who's going to breed and all that. But even then, you can't really count on it because, I mean, I lost some eggs. It wasn't nothing crazy. I think I lost about maybe like 15 eggs, you know. So that's another thing too you have to kind of consider, you know, like it's not gonna be 100% hatch rate or fertility rate, you know. Even then, you know, like fertility rate, I think I had like about 90%, you know, around the ballpark of that. And then from there on, you know, what hatched out, you know. So you kind of have to, you know, estimate it. You can't really say, oh, well, this female's gonna produce me 10 eggs, you know, and all of them are gonna be fertile. And you can't really do that, you know. So, I mean, it's still, I mean, for me, like I was saying, for me, it was still kind of difficult, but I mean, I kind of ballparked it and I shot off.
Yeah, but you even like with that, I think it's good to kind of have a plan. I know some people just kind of go crazy and just don't even know what they're gonna produce numbers wise. So it's good to have a plan and make sure you don't go over.
And it could be really be really quick to just like, you know, overproduce. Cause I mean, you know, like these geckos are pretty prolific, you know, they're going to breed and they're going to lay pretty good, you know, for the most part when they're in peak, you know, their peak age, you know. So, I mean, it just, you know, that's kind of what it gets harder because you're like, oh man, should I leave this one out or not? You know, cause I think I left 2 high contrast bold tangerine trumpers, and then 1 high contrast female, like from the lineup, you know, which I would have like right now, like man, I could have bred them, you know, but it just kind of like, you know, I'll just rather give them that year off, and by next year they're gonna be, you know, they're gonna be ready to go basically because they're gonna be 2 years old. But you know, it's kind of hard, you know, to estimate how much you're gonna be producing. At least for me, you know, I'm not, you know, still in the ballpark, you know, like just gonna be kind of just hope for the best, you know, and get your numbers where you want to have them at, because if not, you're gonna either be under or be way over.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that. Like even preparing for next year, I'm just like, oh, what am I gonna do? Just fingers crossed and make sure that, you know, make sure everything works out and make sure you have enough space too, because it's like space is probably the biggest thing for everybody.
No, yeah, definitely. That was kind of like something where I ran into a little bit, but it kind of doing those shows, it kind of helped out along the way. But I mean, at the same time, I kind of not lucked out, but a lot of the not a lot of the shows, the 2 big shows, they got canceled. So it was a good relief, man, because that was going to be less traveling and less being away. But at the same time, I was like, okay, man, I have to move some out, or, you know, sell a little bit more at the shows, you know, because that space does become an issue, you know. I mean, I'm in California where, like I was mentioning, if I leave them out of heat here, they'll be okay, you know. They'll probably eat a little bit less, but they'll still be growing, but a little bit slower rate. But I mean, I know other parts, it gets a lot colder and you have to have heat on them, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So going into next season, like do you have a game plan already? Like when you start to kind of plan out the season and what you're going to pair, and are you excited for anything in specific you got going on?
Yeah, well, I mean, right now it's kind of growing up some of the bold wine yellow stuff, high contrast that I have going on. So I mean, that one I'm gonna see if I can breed them for this coming up year, and see what they do, man. Because I mean, the look on them, it's really
They're
nice.
looking nice.
The outline, the orange outlines on them, and it just, I didn't think it was gonna be in that direction with the wine yellow, because I mean, this is pretty much the first year I added the wine yellow into my high contrast project. So I mean, it just kind of changed everything around, But at the same time, I don't want to add too much wine yellow into the high contrast. So, I mean, that's going to be kind of its own separate thing, another little side project in the high contrast. But I mean, that's definitely something I can't wait to see what they do next year. And even the original pairing, like I'm excited for that again, that and just to see where everything kind of takes off from there, kind of developing the lines a little bit better. And man, maybe hopefully I can produce some Murphy Bells next year. Get lucky,
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, but I mean, it's a lot of little side projects, that not side projects, but a lot of projects that I'm definitely looking forward to next year, and seeing how to develop and keep developing, and get excited for all that.
Yeah, I think next year is going to be like such a great year for a lot of people. People growing out stuff, and people, just getting ready for the next season. There's so many good, like, awesome breeders, some of the top breeders that have been holding back stuff from, 2020 and even like, this year, 2021. So it should be, a really nice year where a lot of the stuff that people have been line breeding are just kind of like coming into fruition, since I think a lot of people just kind of took like the past 2 years off, or didn't breed as many, or kind of gave some of their nicer females a year or two off. So I think this next year should be a really good year for a lot of people.
Yeah, because even then, like 2020, it was, I mean, for me, it was unsure, because like the whole COVID situation. So, I mean, a lot of my pairing started off really late. I didn't start pairing up until late March, so I wasn't even sure how much, what I was going to breed, or what I was going to breed,
Right.
So, I mean, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it, and it ended up being kind of like another turning point, into what everything has been developing. Because even then, it just, you can't really, expect, you kind of just gonna kind of go with it, as far as, projects and all that. And, it was a good turning point for me on that too, on last year's, everything that went on.
Yeah. And even shows wise, we were like totally not even sure about what was going to happen with shows, and what shows were going to go and what shows weren't going to go on. So
yeah, because even then this year, I mean, San Jose Reptile Show and the Sacramento show, they're big shows, they got canceled. So I mean, so that, was also like, okay, for me, I wanted to do those shows, but at the same time, I was like, oh man, like kind of good thing that it didn't happen, because it was less traveling, and, because that gets stressful too,
Yeah. I know you've been traveling a lot with the Oregon show. You were going to, and then Reptile Super Show, and you've been traveling all the shows in California. It's crazy.
Yeah, because I mean, I went to the Oregon show, and then came back, and then that same week, the week that I came back, I was supposed to go do San Jose, but it got canceled. So I was like, okay, a good relief, man, because I was gonna be, not traveling for that weekend. And then the following weekend, I was out of town, but not reptile related. And then came back, and then the following weekend, that was when it was a super show. So I mean, it was kind of like back to back, traveling, and then we were supposed to have the Sacramento show, but that didn't happen either. So I was like, okay. And then I did the San Luis Obispo show, which was not too long ago. That's another travel that I had to do, But yeah, I mean, they're fun. Definitely, they're fun. Reptile shows are always, they're always good to be there out there and just talk to people. But I mean, it does get hectic too,
Yeah.
And just being, and then setting up, taking everything down, packing all the geckos. The whole process before that, it's stressful. Coming back tired and unpacking that's also a toll. So I mean, it has a good and bad on shows, but I mean, it's worth it at the end of the day, and just being out there and just kind of talking to all these people that that they're into the hobby, or not necessarily leopard geckos, but just the reptile hobby. It's always cool.
Yeah, and I just came back from Tinley, which was a couple weeks ago, and it was just so nice just to hang out and not just vent. Venting is fun, definitely, and it's cool, but just to like hang out and talk to people and just relax and go see other people's stuff is nice too.
And that's gonna be a bucket list goal next year. If I can do Tinley, that'll be great.
Yeah.
Not gonna get my hopes up or anything, but I definitely want to go out there. Even then, like traveling to Oregon for the show out there, even though it was a small show, it wasn't like one of the big ones. I mean, it was super fun, just being on the road and all that,
Right.
Obviously it's super tiring, but I mean, it has it's not benefits, but I mean, it's fun times, but Tinley is definitely a show that I would be cool to, if not at least attend,
Right.
But definitely Van, that'll be super cool.
So everybody go hit them up and go DM Golden Valley Reptiles to come to Tinley next year.
I definitely want to go to it, but like I said, I'm not gonna get my hopes up if it doesn't happen as far as vending.
Right.
Traveling to just go out there and attend, that'll be pretty cool, But the one I think October is the big one, right? Or
yeah, October's usually the bigger one.
October is the big one. So the one for October. So I mean, we'll see. I'll see how everything's going. Definitely will be a great experience to be out there and just, because I know it gets kind of crazy on the big ones,
Right,
how will you compare it to like the Super Show?
It's a lot more cramped than the.
It's more cramped because space-wise.
Yeah, I think the venue at the Super Show is definitely a lot bigger. People,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's pretty close when it comes to people, but I think the Super Show is definitely a lot more space.
Yeah, because even then, I mean, you've been out there, and so I mean, it's a big hall,
Yeah.
and I mean, at least for like the first time I went to the Super Show, it was like, man, like there's a lot of people here, and that was like back in 2012, I think, 12 or 13, I forgot when it was, but. And I didn't think it was gonna be that big. I thought it was gonna be just like something like,
Right.
like whatever, like a regular expo kind of thing. But I'm like, oh man, like I have to wait in line for like 30 minutes to
Right.
get inside, like, or
It's
even
crazy.
longer than that.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
and that was my first show, so that's kind of like how I thought all of them were. But
yeah,
it's totally depending on which show. They're all great,
Yeah.
especially the ones in California. But that show is just kind of like the king of all the shows out there.
No, yeah. And then I still have one more show, which is gonna be here in Fresno. So I mean, that one I don't have to travel since it's gonna be here local. So I mean that's my last show for the year, and I can kind of close the book in 2021 and just kind of look forward to the next season, to next year, and to more craziness here.
Nice. So going into next year and kind of on like all the stuff you have going on with your collection and where you're going, is there anything else that people should be looking forward to, or like stuff that you're releasing next year that should be really nice coming out that you're excited to release, or I don't know, just in general, if you have any updates for people?
So the last thing I didn't mention earlier is the bow stuff, the tangerine bow stuff that I just started popping up this year. I'm holding back a nice male and 3 nice, really really nice females actually, and 1 het female, 1 tangerine het bow female. And the end goal will be starting my high contrast bow stuff, because I mean you do see a lot of nice tangerine trumpers. I mean, even then you see some crazy nice tangerine bows, sunglow bows, but
Right.
just that high contrast that I already established with my tremper stuff. That's what I want to do with my bows. So that's kind of gonna go forward in 2022. So I mean, that's another little project that I'm really looking forward to see what I can produce out of them, and see where they take off. And I'm pretty sure it's gonna need a few more years, but I mean, for now, it's gonna be just just to see where it goes, and where it takes off from, and acquiring the correct animals for that project. But I mean, definitely those that tangerine bow high contrast stuff that I'm gonna be working with, really have a lot of high hopes for it, and looking forward to see what they do next year.
Yeah, and the ones that you posted on Instagram already, they're
Yeah.
already looking nice. So just to
Yeah,
see
so
if-
that striped male, and it's super nice. And then I have the females that I have, that they're not necessarily high contrast or like keeping a lot of contrast. So that's why I say like tangerine bow high contrast project, But I
Right.
mean, you don't. I mean, it's more the visual to see where it can go to, or how can you make it go to where you wanted to go, is kind of more the challenging part right now, at least for that project. And then it's gonna kind of slowly go on from there, and eventually turn out to be something great, like hopefully, But
yeah, we'll
that's
just give you
definitely gonna be
3-4 more
another
years
project.
and start blowing people
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's another project that I have in the lineup. I have 1.3, so I mean,
Okay.
it's still gonna be kind of small for now, but it's just kind of building towards that, and to see where it goes, and it should be a fun year, even though, like I said, I'm gonna be more relieved not producing that many geckos.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like you think like during the year, it's that weird time when you're just collecting eggs and you're like, oh, it's just gonna be a decent season, and then they start hatching out, and you're like, can I get a break?
No, yeah, and I mean, like I mentioned, like when I was like in the peak of the season, I was still doing about 10-hour shifts, 9-10 hour shifts. So I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
But then it kind of slowed down, and I was kind of like, okay, good, keep it like that, because I have a lot of
Yeah.
geckos,
Exactly.
and they just kind of managing everything, I think that's another difficult part, like managing your work, the geckos, your collection, and your personal life. That's something that doesn't get talked about a lot, but it's something that's
Yeah.
not that it should get talked about, but I mean, it's another difficult aspect of, like, breeding, and just kind of going,
Right.
kind of like trying to do everything.
There's so much more that goes
once.
behind the scenes that people
Oh,
don't
yeah,
even see. Yeah.
Yeah, so
So-
that's like, that's something else that doesn't really get talked about a lot. And yeah, definitely all that work that gets put in behind all that, behind all that post. Because even then, like taking pictures, taking pictures
Oh,
is not
yeah.
easy. Like
Especially with
Especially, like,
babies.
yeah, and then like the way I like to take pictures is like I kind of go outside and put them in my hand. So I mean, that's another thing. That's, you're not gonna get a good shot in like in a few minutes. You're gonna be out there. At least, for me, they'd be out there taking 20, 30 pictures of one gecko, and trying to
Yeah.
get that, like, that good pose, that good view, or, the correct, everything, the lighting, and for me, like, I always been a big fan of like the natural lighting. So that's why I always kind of take my pictures outside. So I mean, that's not a easy task, especially with like bows. They're always moving, and trampers,
Yeah.
once they get to a certain age, they don't get as sensitive to the light, crazy sensitive like bows, but they're still squint their eyes and all that. But
Yeah, bells
bows
do
is
not
always-
like to open their eyes at all.
yeah, bows are super hard to get them outside, and moving and get them to hold still and all that. It's hard, So I mean,
Yeah.
everything that gets put behind everything, like the post and all that, like even then, like till now, I'm kind of finally catching a break where like I can probably finish the website by the end
I know
of
you've been
November.
working on that for a while. We've been talking about that
Well,
for.
Well, the thing that happened was last year, my computer broke. My computer
Oh, yeah,
broke,
right.
and
Yeah.
so it didn't. I never got to finish it. And once I got my computer fixed, the season started.
Yeah.
So right now it's towards the end. Like towards the end, I still have a handful of geckos, that are going up, which I'm not like super rushed because I mean it's gonna be winter pretty soon. So, I can always grow them out for the spring. But it's now coming to that same point where like, okay, now I have more time. Little by little, I'm starting to have more time. Now I can kind of like finish off that website that I always wanted to work at, like finish it, And it's just difficult because like people contact you and then geckos are growing and they're already asking, because they want to be in the waiting list or whatnot. So even then, like I'm never able to post anything because it's not up to size. Because for you to post something on a website, they have to be at least in the 20-30 gram range.
Right.
You can't you can't really post babies that are 5-6 grams on the website because that's too small by the time they grow up. So it has this. It's it's goods and stuff, goods and bads on that website thing on my situation. But I mean, I'm hoping to finally complete that and get that running, And then even then, like I'm doing all that by myself, so I'm not getting like nobody's gonna helping me out. So it's kind of like difficult for me, like to be like, okay, I like how it looks now, but then I switch a little bit of something, and then everything changes. So I'm like, oh man. So that's another thing to process. Like, oh man, I have to load up the geckos or their information and all that. So I mean, I've been playing around with that.
Another.
Yeah. And then like it's time consuming because I mean you yourself, you have your website, you post stuff up there, so it gets time consuming also,
Right.
Taking the pictures, posting them, uploading everything to the website, and that it's
It's a lot of work.
like you were mentioning, everything that goes kind of behind it, it doesn't get really talked about it a lot, but I mean it's a lot of work at the end of the day, and those couple hours that you do maintenance on them, like the cleaning, the feeding, that's only part of what goes behind it, and you still have everything else. And then obviously, you have your friends and you build throughout the years in the hobby that you're always trying to talk with and, get advice from too, so that always adds up too.
Yeah. It's crazy, like just how much time you put into it, and that's also like where the passion comes from. Like that's why we do it. It's not about like anything else, and especially like you're a one-man team, and we're trying to get all of it done. So it's really just a passion about the geckos and just trying to produce like super cool stuff that we could appreciate at the end of the day.
No, yeah, definitely, yeah. At the end of the day, like you were saying, it's all about passion. Because if you're not in it for the right reason, then you're not gonna be in it for a long time, or that's another thing too, and you already know the people that have been breeding for a long time, they just, a lot of them, they don't only work with one species, they have multiple, or at some point they have multiple species, so I mean, that's another cool thing about it, it's always other things that are going to drive you and get you passionate about,
Right, and that's what keeps it in it, because if not, like, all the time you spend like taking pictures and cleaning and answering messages, like sometimes it doesn't even feel like it's worth it. But it's like, especially when the breeding season comes around, you start hatching out stuff. It's like, okay, this is why you do everything. So it's a good reminder. Yeah. So George, I appreciate you coming back on the podcast. It's been a while, so glad you're finally back on, and we gotta definitely catch up at a show soon next time I'm back in California.
No, for sure. Yeah, man, anytime, it's always a pleasure, having me on, and thank you, and then, I mean, these podcasts, they're really good, that way people get to know a little bit more about the breeders and just kind of what goes on behind everything, because, I mean, one thing is posting a picture, and another thing is like getting to know where they've been through with those projects or how much work they've been putting in it,
Right. Yeah, this past year wasn't your first year breeding, so.
For sure, and it will be my last.
Yeah.
So exactly. A lot more to go.
Exactly. Nice. So for people who don't know you already and want to kind of look at your stuff and, learn more about you and want to even like ask you questions and stuff, where can they find you at?
So Facebook I'm under Golden Valley Reptiles. So Facebook is a little bit less active as my Instagram. My Instagram is usually more my active. my active account. Is shorter, GV Reptiles for Golden Valley Reptiles, GV Reptiles for short. That's where I'm posting kind of consistently. I've been slacking a little bit lately, but I mean, as far as stories, I try to post almost on the daily, you know, when I'm cleaning and doing stuff like that, the regular maintenance duties and all that. So definitely could hit me up on Instagram a little bit more easier. Then I have my website, which is linked on both my Instagram and Facebook, and then emails are linked there too. And you know, just that's where I'm more active in Instagram.
Nice. So thank you again for coming on. And yeah, guys, for anybody who hasn't seen his stuff, it's amazing. So he got me in it, and you know, I'm hooked now, so he'll definitely get you some awesome stuff.